Hi guys, in this section of the course, I will be going over early laning phase on the games for Nami. I'm going to teach you how to play against certain matchups and share my decision-making thoughts throughout the lecture. Towards the end of this section, you will find the lecturing covering best practices on early game warding, as well as the activities for you in practice. So starting off on our first video, we'll be focusing a little bit more on playing early aggression and what you want to be doing in the very few minutes that start a laning phase on Nami. So we'll just kind of jump right in to what's going on in this game. So as you can see, we did not leash, so just in case a gank occurs, sometimes I like to always ward for those potential level 2 ganks, since the bottom lane is starting and leashing. Is that the primary things that you want to be focusing on is just trading and making sure that you're not doing nothing in the laning phase. So, as you can see from the start, I just walk forward and I use my W to trade just actively against anyone I can. A really important thing that you always want to be focusing on is using your auto attacks. So, as you can see in pretty much all of the trades that go forward, you always want to be auto attacking and then using your spells afterwards. This is for a couple of reasons. Number one, if you have the opportunity to auto attack, it just does more damage. In the early stages, as you can see right there, you're doing about 40 to 50 damage, depending on whether area procs or not. And then your spells do between 50 to 70 damage too. So just making sure that you're getting in auto attacks quite frequently will amplify the amount of trading power that you have. Another thing too is usually if you end up auto attacking and then casting your W afterwards, they're most likely in range for you to have the bounces happen. Now, as you can see right here, since they've backed off a little bit, just make sure that you're always taking an active role in your lane. So, as you can see, I'm just auto-attacking the minions whenever I can, and it allows us to hit level 2 beforehand. The thing that I want to introduce to you guys, really before we start talking about this play, is level 2 power spikes, which is a very potent and easy way to generate huge advantages in your lane. So, if you did not know, the first full wave plus all 3 melee minions of the second wave will get you level 2 when you're 2v2ing in bottom lane. This allows you to have an entire extra skill on someone, and most likely means that you will end up either getting summoners or potentially killing someone in most circumstances. So, on a champion like Nami, as you can see right here, the primary things you want to be focusing on is when the last melee minion is going to die, and your positioning because of it. A lot of times what people end up doing is they hit level 2, but they're too far back, so they aren't able to create any advantages from their level 2 outside of just being able to get it pushed to the wave. Usually want to be able to activate trades in most cases, and a lot of people will make the mistake of being too aggressive right as you hit level 2 because they don't see you hitting level 2. So, as you can see in this situation, this minion is about to go down, so I begin to start surging forward on the enemy player. Because of that, I now hit level 2, and we use our quick skill up to then skill up our ability. Now that is control plus the ability that we want to skill up. So in this situation, we're going to hit control Q. Boom, we've instantly leveled up this skill, correct? And what it allows us to then cast a spell without having to take our mouse off over whoever we're highlighting and have to skill up, which saves you a significant amount of time, and you'll thank me later for having this skill set in just a general sense of the word. Because of that, it allows me to be in range for the Soraka, who now realizes I am level 2, but it's already too late to run away because it allows me to hit the bubble. After that, we just use our Ignite immediately, since remember, we're attacking them with 2 skills and they're not level 2 yet. So we're going to guarantee win this trade no matter what, even if we don't kill someone. So just trying to create as much pressure as possible using the Ignite. Then we use our W just to front load as much damage as possible. And as you can see right here, thanks to the fact that we're both level 2, my Lucian has his dash, was lets him dash forward and front load a bunch of extra damage too, which allows us to get the kill on Soraka. Another thing to note too is usually in these circumstances, you end up taking a lot of summoners from someone. So as you can see right there, we've taken the summoner heal, we've taken the barrier from Soraka, and we've taken her flash, which makes her incredibly vulnerable for us to continue snowballing. Snowballing is a term where it's under the pretense that once you start rolling a ball down a hill, like a snowball, it continues to get bigger and bigger and then crash on someone. And it's going to be a term we're going to be using quite frequently in all of these videos, so make sure to pay attention to that. Now, the main thing to note too now is because Soraka doesn't have flash anymore, she's usually going to be our target of choice that we want to kill. For the most part, you just see me sitting in the brush and not auto-attacking the minions. The reason for that is because the enemy player doesn't have flash anymore, I kind of want the wave to start pushing back into us. That way we're a lot harder to gank since we're not pushed up on the turret, and it makes us more easily be able to kill the lane opponents. Now, in this case, jungler did end up deciding to gank us, and the primary things are as follows. Number one, how do you die to the gank? So, in this circumstance, since there's a lot of pings right here, this is why my AD carry is starting to walk over and ward. We see that the enemy player is right here. So, how do we die in this situation? Well, he hits Cocoon and then we're CC'd for a long period of time and they can front load a lot of damage. Fortunately, also, since we got the level 2 power spike, we both have of our flashes and summoner heals. So we're not down too many summoners in this case. Since Elise is walking towards me and she shoots the Cocoon, I just juke forward, that way evading the easiest way, and just bouncing off the heal and kiting backwards. After that, we just use our bubble to make sure that the AD carry can't dish out any more damage, and we're just going to recover with our health potions. Since we're low on mana, we don't want to be spamming heals into ourselves if we can just drink health potions in this case. Another thing to note too is now our Kha'Zix is coming down to respond to this. Remember what we were talking about before with the level 2 power spike and how we have taken the flash from Soraka. So, as a communication tool, you usually want to be pinging the person in these circumstances when a fight's about to break out of who you want to kill. Most of the time, you usually want to pile on the person that deals the most damage. So, in a situation where neither of these players had used any summoners, I'd be spam pinging the AD carry. But because of the fact that we have taken so many summoners from the Soraka, we spam ping the Soraka. That way our jungler knows who we're going to go for in the fight. Now, just to guarantee the fight is a one fight, I just use my flash and bubble on him to make sure that we guarantee the lockdown. And that's kind of how you play a lot of the early stages in most laning matchups for Nami, especially against ranged champions. So just make sure that you're actively auto-attacking, does a ton of damage. Make sure that if you're not hitting a player, you're hitting minions, that way you can hit level 2. Remembering that you only need to kill the 3 melee minions in the second wave to hit level 2, so practice up with that auto-skilling up with the control plus the skill of whatever you want to level up. It'll be a very helpful thing for you to create pressure. And make sure that you're playing aggressively, using your W trades, especially in the early stages, to just get good trade value out of it. You can't always get lane advantages in every situation, so this video will be mostly introducing you to kind of how to keep a stable laning phase if you don't have an advantageous matchup, or if you're getting pushed in a lot and harassed under turret. So in this game, as you can see right here, we're actually ended up leashing, and we even enter the lane basically getting hit by a bunch of skill shots from 2 ranged champions. So, just to introduce the lane matchup real quick, it's Vel'Koz and Varus versus Kai'Sa and Nami. Both of these champions have incredibly strong poke and push in the early stages, and they can harass you from incredibly long range. So because of that also, I knew I wasn't going to be able to get in range and cast spells on them quite frequently, and I'd mostly know that I'd be playing defensively. So we opted actually into the coin rather than the spell thieves, since I knew I wasn't going to get either the push to hit turrets or be able to walk up and harass quite frequently. So the primary focuses in most of these kinds of lane phases is do your best to dodge skill shots and make sure that you keep you and your teammate topped off as best as possible. So the primary harass that's going to come out in this situation is going to be the Vel'Koz, so just making sure that I'm constantly moving both forward and backwards just to avoid the Vel'Koz Qs in the early stages is quite important. Another thing to note too is at any point in time if I have an opportunity to not only heal myself but bounce it and hit someone else, I want to do that just for mana flow procs to have a little bit extra mana. Your primary focus in these kinds of lane phases is just survive. Make sure that you don't eat too much harass and you help your AD carry last hit under turret. So this is where we're going to help you introduce you to last hitting under the turret and how to help your AD carry do it in most situations. So as you can see right here, the wave is kind of pushing. So we'll first introduce you to the 2 elements of last hitting under turret for your AD carries situation. When a melee minion is full HP, it takes 2 turret shots plus 1 auto attack from your AD carry. When a ranged minion is full HP, if your AD carry does not have any bonus AD, especially no long swords or Doran's blades or anything like that, you will need to auto attack it once to help him last hit it afterwards, because it technically takes 1 turret shot plus 2 auto attacks. It doesn't matter if they start with the Doran shield or Doran's blade, they will not have the AD for that. This changes obviously once your AD carry potentially backs with multiple longswords or longswords or a BF sword, but in most circumstances you're going to be helping in the early stages. So we're just going to kind of show you a little bit of last hitting mechanics for this. Now, remember what I was saying where it's 2 turret shots plus an auto attack? That means you usually want a melee minion about 60% health to last hit. So if we look at each of these minions, this one was full HP, got hit twice. This is a last hittable one. This minion right here, it's about 55-60%, so we don't need to touch this one. This one, however, is about 80%, which means the 2 turret shots will kill it. So because of that, I'm going to start auto-attacking this melee minion right here twice. That way it's last hittable for my teammate. Another thing to note too is when you do start getting levels, you can give your Tidecaller's Blessing, the E, and that will usually help your AD carry last hit range minions without you having to help. So in circumstances where you're not in range, you can also use that as a cool tip and trick to help him last hit. So we're just auto-attacking where we can, and making sure that we are always making sure that he can last hit anything that I can do. Also, since they've used a lot of skills, just use that opportunity to look for a nice quick trade and bounce the heal off and get the mana flow band stacks. The name of the game is mostly dodgeball, so I'm just constantly trying to make sure that my character is always moving. That way I'm just a little bit harder to hit. You're not going to dodge every skill shot in the game, but you want to do your best to make sure that you avoid as much as possible. Another thing to note too is that in the early stages, your heal doesn't really heal for very much and with 1 point in it, so always use your health potions early to just keep yourself topped off. I also opted into biscuits in this lane just to have incredibly good sustain and make sure that I don't get harassed too much in this lane matchup, since I knew that it was going to be pretty rough. Now, whenever you do start losing a lot of HP, it's just sometimes better, in cases especially where your AD carry is mostly full HP, to just step back and make sure that you're not in range to get harassed while you can recover your HP. Another thing to note too is getting good habits. So in this circumstance, as you see right here, my heal is up, but I'm not using it. The reason for that is I'm really close to level 3, as shown by my experience bar, so I'm going to wait for this melee minion to die before I level up the skill, then use the heal on myself to get more efficiency. A lot of times it's usually just a numbers game when you're playing defensively, and you just want to make sure that you don't lose the lane really, really hard. Most of that just ties into the fact that you just need to keep yourself sustained up, dodge what you can, and then make sure you don't overstay in a lane where you don't think you can stay anymore. Now, you won't be able to help with almost all the last hits, but making sure that I do step forward and try to create any opportunities to help my AD carry last hit as best I can is the preferred scenario. And that's why we kind of introduced you to how to help last hit under the turret. Since they're pretty much out of mana now and we've kind of weathered the storm of the early stages, it allows me to now start surging forward a little bit and just look for some trades wherever I can, making sure that I bounce the heal off of myself and hit the enemy player, mostly because of the fact that I need to heal myself the most, and your heal loses power as it bounces. So just starting it with myself makes it feel better. And now that we've kind of had a situation where most of the early game pressure is no longer applied to us, we can just continue to sustain and pick up blue coins to get some mana back, and make sure that we're not wasteful on our mana also. As you can see, I'm just like constantly helping my AD carry. Last hit as best I can under the turret. A lot of this comes with experience, but I do recommend always making good habits of things like this, just to make sure that your AD carry doesn't fall behind in farm with things that you can help. Now, because of the fact that they're both and it looks like they're both backing, we're going to also end up recalling at the same time, just to make sure that we can get a buy at about the same time. Kind of jumping on ahead. Another thing to note too is in any circumstances where you have the opportunity to maybe be really close to a potion, like 35 or 40 gold, I stayed a little bit longer to make sure I got 2 potions and a fairy charm, just to have as much sustain opportunities as possible. If you equate health potions to kind of how old mana potions went, if I can drink a potion and that heals 150 health, that means I don't have to expend this my W mana to then heal myself in that case, which is usually the preferred scenario. So, and once you get back into lane, you're pretty much kind of going back to just playing defensively as best you can, and making sure that you don't expend too much mana that's unnecessary, and try to keep you and your AD carry as topped as possible. Remembering that you bought a lot of potions, and you have a decent amount of sustain now, it's a lot easier for you to just kind of keep your teammate alive once items start being involved in it. Just always remembering that you just kind of want to move around as much as possible. These kinds of lanes can be incredibly frustrating, but your best bet, especially on a champion like Nami, and one of the things that makes her so powerful, is the fact that you can constantly spam your heal up, even if you're low on HP. It's not like a shielding champion like Janna, where you have to always prevent all of the damage, and then all the damage sticks. Now, the most important thing to note is the fact that since we've been playing incredibly defensively, the enemy team is almost always pushed up on your turret, and this creates opportunities for your teammates to help you. In this game in particular, we have a Twisted Fate, so he pings that he's on his way. We flash bubble on the gold card, which forces the flash on him, and we just make sure we pile on the the support that ended up losing his flash. The main purpose of this video is just to show you that you don't always need to crush your lane, and that sometimes you're going to get bad matchups, but it's important that you're playing the matchup defensively and well, and not losing in huge CS numbers. By practicing making sure that you're helping your AD carry last hit under the turret, and try your best to basically be moving as much as possible so that you don't get hit by skill shots. Alright guys, jumping into our next laning phase, as you can see right in front of your screen, we'll be playing Nami with a Twitch instead against a Janna and a Lucian. This laning phase will mostly be predicated on the fact that laning phase is a long run. It's not a sprint in most cases. So this will be focusing mostly on explaining how to take summoners, trade summoners around, and play around with summoner advantage in sometimes, so that you can create pressure in the lane and eventually score kills in the lane. So we'll just jump right into it. And the first thing that you always want to be doing, as we've always talked about with Nami, is just getting your W off and making sure that you trade a lot. One thing to note too is the interaction in the game where minions will only target you if you use a spell targeted on another player. That means that whenever you use W on yourself, the minions actually don't turn and hit you. So it's an important thing in terms of identifying trade patterns for situations like this. So in this case right here, there's lots of ranged minions that can hit me. So rather than use the W by clicking on a player and having it bounce that way, I bounce it off of myself instead first and cause no minion aggro. As you can see right here, the W hits me, and it bounces, and the minions don't turn to me until I start auto-attacking. This is really good to just get in little trades where you just want to micro-trade and run away and not take too much minion aggro. After that, it's just important to make sure that you're always auto-attacking. Another thing to note too is in the early stages, usually Nami W is relatively 3 to 4 seconds longer than most of other trade patterns. We'll use the example of Janna in this one, the Janna W. So make sure that once you're about, getting to 5 or 4 seconds, you're kind of ending the trade early. That way you can give yourself cooldown time for your W to come back up and trade again. Remember, since you have sustain advantage, you want to be trading as much as possible, and then just abuse the fact that you have sustain advantage to get your HP back up. Reminder also that anytime nothing's going on, you want to be auto-attacking the minions. Now, it's actually a pretty common mistake by a lot of players in most situations, and I see it a lot in lower elo games, is using your flash. Remember that if you use your flash, that a player who's in range already hitting you can flash after you and kill you. So the important things to tackle in this situation are as follows. When I walk forward and begin trading, it's a good idea by the Janna to W me, ignite me, since I'm not close to my AD carry. And the most important thing is making sure that they can't chase me after I flash, or if they do chase me, that it's a trade at least. If you ever in a circumstance where the AD carry has to trade his life to kill you and your AD carry is alive, it's always a winning situation since your guy gets to sit there and farm all of the wave. So the first thing that I do is make sure that I put ignite on the enemy Lucian. That way if he continues to chase me while my AD carry is hitting him, he will most likely die because of the fact that it will burn through heal. After that, we just make sure we use our flash as fast as possible and start kiting backwards. So the main thing to note in this situation is ignite is down from the Janna, and then my ignite is down with flash and heal both on cooldown. So we have to exercise a little bit more caution and not trade too aggressively in a lot of situations. The benefit of it, though, is the fact that the enemy AD carry is not running a Doran shield, and he's lost a substantial amount of HP. Reminding you guys that you always want to be trading down on HP because Nami has the sustained advantage so she can get her HP back up. Now, since I'm not playing with something like Lucian that easily procs the E, I just decided to go bubble level 2. I really like this way of talenting because it gives me the option to get my heal again at level 3 and power it up a little bit more if I feel like there's a lot of trading and I want to sustain value. For the most part, at this point in time, you just want to make sure that you're trading whenever you can and not dying to ganks. Usually, most players will end up showing you that you're getting ganked, as you can see right here, by walking up incredibly aggressively randomly. If those are the instances and you don't know where the jungler is, it's usually just better to back off and wait for the jungler to either show or your jungler to be on your side, as now you've kind of seen our Lee Sin is now approaching our side, and it allows us to start walking up and be more aggressive again, since if we do get ganked, we can kite backwards and we'll get reinforcements. In these situations, you just want to be creating pressure on the lane. Now, the best time to trade is whenever an AD carry is trying to go for last hits. The most apparent one is whenever people are going for cannons. So in this circumstance, you can see right here, I'm just kind of eyeing the cannon HP, and you can kind of see that the AD carry is looking for it too. So when the cannon is low, as you can see right here, he has to make a conscious choice between either trading onto me or getting the cannon. In these circumstances, you can either get incredibly valuable trades or just make the enemy player miss CS, which, incrementally gives you a lead in the lane. It's just a good thing to have. We shoot the bubble and he does a good job dashing, so after that our trade is pretty much over. As I've stated before, why I like going bubble second a lot of times is just because of the fact that it gives me the option to put a second point in W at level 3 and have a bit more sustain. After that, it's just a good habit at any point in time when your jungler is on this side or you know where the enemy jungler is, to just make sure that you're hitting the turret, making sure that you're generating as much gold income as you possibly can, especially with spell thieves, so that you can get towards that quest as soon as possible. It's an incredibly good habit to build, and I recommend starting to work on it as much as possible for most people. Now, once we have control of the lane and we're constantly pushing, and now I've seen the jungler, one thing that I'm not doing is hitting the minions as frequently. That's mostly just because I want the wave to pool up as many minions as possible before it hits the turret. That way there's as many minions as possible, so the AD carry is usually the last hitting, and it gives me more opportunities to either look for harass, or hit them under the turret, or just hit the turret itself. Now, whenever trades are happening, we just want to make sure that we're bouncing the heal off of my AD carry anytime they're trading AD carry to AD carry, and cutting backwards. Since we don't know where the jungler is, I'm kind of exercising caution since they're trading quite aggressively. Another thing to note too is a quick reminder that although my Ignite is on cooldown and theirs is too, they still have Summoner Heal. So you kind of want to just play a war of attrition unless they incredibly mess up, since you won't actually have the extra HP that you think you do since heal is on cooldown. Now that I feel incredibly comfortable and we're super far ahead in terms of the HP department, due to the nature of the fact that we have a lot of sustain advantage, I can play aggressively and just continuously trade. Another thing to note too is I ping my AD carry to use his health potion just to let him know that I'm not going to heal him as much. I want to heal myself just so that we can each have a good amount of HP so that we're healthy in case the jungler does come down and gank us. One thing to note too is if the enemy players, as you can see right here, ever walk up, it's usually because of the fact that they're going to need to get a gank, and so I just step back. Since the janitor really wants to stop our back himself, I just decide to ping the enemy player, use my E to slow them, and then W on top of that, just to heal myself up and win the trade. This is the important thing that occurs though. Reminder that Janna now has used Flash, and it has forced the summoner heal from the bottom lane. That means that because we used our heal substantially earlier, our heal will be up. Our heal will be up at times where their heal is not up. So it actually gives us opportunities to potentially look for all ends. Also, because of that trade, we now force the enemy bot lane to back, and it allows us to push this all the way to the turret before resetting. Unfortunately, the wave's kind of in a messed up spot, so me and my AD carry decide to just stay one extra wave and push it all the way there. This wave's a little bit risky in terms of the fact that the jungler could gank us at the same time that the bottom lane comes down, so as you can see right here, I'm starting to step away from the wave just to make sure that we don't get jumped on. The jungler does in fact gank, and we just use a bubble and we kite out right now. Despite the fact that the enemy bottom lane is there, they have a huge wave under the turret, so it gives us a free back in most situations. Kind of fast forwarding through this, we're going to end up getting our Spell Thieves, Sapphire Crystal for trading, and mana purposes, and just make sure that we get any health potions. If in fact you don't like tier builds in any of your builds, then you probably just end up getting some Fairy Charms to build towards your Athenes first. So now that we're back in the lane, quick reminder that, taking into account all of the summoners, we have Summoner Heal and Ignite. They only have Ignite. So we have opportunities to potentially look for all ends. And as you kind of see, now that I know that the jungler most likely left and we have the wave in a good position, I'm just looking for trades wherever I can. Since the AD carry dashed forward and flashed on top of me, I just used my Ignite. And because we have the heal and flash back up due to the fact that we traded so early, I'm able to flash and heal out. And then we're just able to chase them all down. This is the most important thing and why it's a marathon, not a sprint in most situations, and playing around whether or not you have summoner advantage or not. So kind of to break down this situation is as follows. Number 1, I have Summoner Heal, Ignite, and Flash up. Number 2, they've used Heal recently, so even if they do have Ignite, the AD carry is the only one equipped with Flash, and the support does not. That means that when it comes to all-in, we just have relatively more power in that regard. So because of that, I just looked for a trade on the AD carry with using my E just to auto attack slow him and look for any trades that I can. It's important that whenever you're playing against things that have dashes to not use your bubble immediately and just try to force them to use their dashes or flashes away before you shoot this bubble. A great way to do that is to just use your E on yourself and slow them down. So the mistake that he makes is actually the fact that he dashes in on top of us. Because of that, he no longer has a way to get away from the bubble, and I look for the bubble right here. Not only that, but now he's hard committed onto me, which gives my AD carry the angle to start hitting him. So even though they're focusing me right now, the things that we've kind of talked about, where we have heal and flash back up, will play a huge part in that. I shoot bubble because I think he's actually going to dash backwards or flash away, but he actually flashes in. The second he starts flashing in, it's just important to make sure that you use your summoners as fast as possible. So in this situation, we're going to ignite him, flash away, and just run away. After that, since we've got the triangle of situations where my AD carry and me were on their AD carry, and he's too far forward, he's going to end up dying. Quick reminder too that since the Janday lost her flash early, I just need to walk up and make sure that I give him the E so that he slows him down, which allows my AD carry to collapse on him and chase him across the lane, which allows us to win the lane. For laning phase, we usually are entering lane. We'll cover the blue side and then we'll do the red side afterwards. So, in most situations, if you're pushing up on and you are the blue side, so as we can see from this indicator right now, anytime you get the lane pushed in a way that has it hitting the turret right here, I recommend walking over up into the river and then popping the blast cone that's right here. After you pop the blast cone, then I recommend that you just ward as far out as you possibly can, usually on Dragon Pit. This will allow you to spot the jungler coming down from potentially multiple angles, such as all the way down here while they're coming from here, or if they're coming from the blue side. And by denying the blast cone right there, it means that they won't be popping over here and dodging your ward that's located right here. Also, another important one to ward is potentially your Tribush ward if you're concerned about people walking potentially behind you. This is usually coordinated with your AD carry in the early stages, as you are using trinket wards and they're up for very short amounts of time, and you only have one of them accessed at one point in time. Now, in situations where maybe you're potentially on the blue side and you're getting pushed in, as such, there's two situations that you need to be aware of. Which is one, once the lane resets, as in it gets off the turret and starts crashing in the middle and you're stepping forward, it's always a good habit to make sure you walk over and ward behind you. That way, when you start contesting these waves again, you don't have a jungler or potentially a mid laner walking behind you. Another thing to be mindful of also is making sure that you don't get ganked through the lane in this brush. So also warding this location can be extremely helpful when the lane is resetting. Now, if you're on the red side right now, then your situation is a little bit differently. So in situations where you're on the red side, you have a couple things to worry about. One, how easy is it for someone to jump over the wall and dodge your ward? If that's the case and they have lots of champions that can jump over, commonly Sejuani and Zac are currently being played at a decent amount of time. Whenever you push in this situation, it's kind of the same situation on the blue side. You want to walk up down to the river and ward out here as far as you possibly can. That way you spot anyone who potentially could be jumping over a ward, and then you usually want to coordinate with your AD carry and get him to ward the Tribush, or vice versa, it doesn't particularly matter. If you're warding in this location right here, which is the common one to happen, the problems that you can run into is the fact that you won't see potentially the jungler coming fast enough. So in a situation where maybe the jungler is coming over the wall, and this ward no longer exists, then by the time you spot here, you spot him on here and you're already up on the turret, you can get chased down the entire lane. So it disallows you to pressure under the turret. By having a ward all the way out here, you get a lot more information available to you. Plus, if the jungler decides to go all the way around behind you and potentially use your blast cone against you, you'll actually spot that unless he goes insanely deep, like up and around. So it's just about covering as many spots as possible to make sure that you can be as aggressive as possible while not dying to any ganks. Now, after that, we want to tackle is after we are done with our trinket wards and our sightstone has completed. So on the blue side, the most common thing that I see most supports do is when they reset and they have their sightstone fully charged on their quest, they walk back to lane. This is actually usually a huge mistake unless you're trying to defend your AD carry from getting dove under the turret while the wave is crashing. Most of the time when you're resetting, you want to actually curve into mid lane. The reason for that is mid lane is where you get most of your focal vision out so that you can see what's going on most of the time. Now, in most cases, you ideally want as a support to walk over and ward over this wall. The reason for that is that it protects your mid laner from getting ganked from the entire right-hand side from the jungler, and it also allows you to see if the jungler is running down into the river. This is also coupled by the fact that you usually want to pink here or here, depending on the pressure in your mid lane. If your mid laner is losing and constantly getting pushed in, I recommend that you only have your pink ward here. If your mid laner is pushing in and winning his lane, maybe he has a couple kills or it's just easy for you see him roaming a lot, that will allow your mid laner to potentially walk down through the river without running over wards. Also, it will allow your mid laner to then potentially have his pink ward in line, giving you a full access roadmap to walking up and down the river for both you as a support and for him as the mid laner. Also, the next ward that you'll end up doing after you get this ward out is you'll be walking down the river, and we want to get a ward on potentially the dragon around here. The reason for that is it allows, if you are getting pushed in, to see if the enemy support is running up the river to potentially gank your teammate, and it will also allow you to see your mid laner roaming down in case you lose control of these pink wards right here. Also, it will also cover your jungler path coming over down through this river. It's also a good habit to make sure that you're walking over and popping this blast point whenever you can. Now, if your AD carry is getting pushed in too much, you'll probably just get this ward, back off, and then swing down and around. Your third ward can be used as follows. If you're having trouble or concerned about getting ganked through the lane, and you want to potentially set up a TP ward, this is going to be your third ward. Warding in the lane allows you to see if potentially the jungler is coming through the lane to gank you while you're getting pushed in, and it will also set up your top laner to potentially TP for you. If in the case that you do not want to use this as a TP ward, or you don't care about the lane, or potentially you're always constantly, pushing them into the lane or the turret. In this situation, you have these two wards set up. Then another good ward is to just potentially move it all the way into here. The reason for that is it allows you to see the jungler doing his blue buff or his gromp, and it will also potentially defend you from getting lane ganked because you will be able to get a ward vision seeing him take this route. Now in the situation where you play against Zac and Fiddlesticks, when Zac being the more commonly picked right now, it's actually better to actually take this ward and move it to the tri-bush. The reason for that is once he hits about level 5, it's really easy for Zac to stand in this tri-bush or stand over this wall and potentially gank you while you're pushing into the turret right now. This ward will protect you from that, and it will allow you to be safe. Now that we've gone over what we want to do on the blue side, let's tackle the red side. So, same thing, always want to make sure that you're making a good habit of constantly coming from the base and you're coming down into mid lane. Now in this situation, you have a lot of options and opportunities for wards. First one is just getting a ward down here. The reason for this is it'll allow you to see if potentially the mid laner is roaming down defensively to potentially gank you while you're either pushing into the turret or come through tri-bush. Now, a lot of people run into the situation where the enemy bot lane has pinked the tri-bush and maybe you can't contest it. There's a couple of good workarounds for this. First of all, as a support, you can walk down to the dragon pit and ward over this wall right here. Now the reason for this ward is so that if he is on the red side and he's coming through this lane right here, you'll see him before he enters the tri-bush, you know when he's coming over. Also, if he ever has an escape or a jump, such as Sejuani or Jarvan, jump over the wall or potentially use the blast plant, you'll also see that so you know that someone's coming behind you. By having this ward here, you also know whenever the jungler is coming through the river, and it means that you no longer need a ward here in this situation. Now the third ward is based on your discrepancy. Once again, through the lane is usually one of the places I like if my top laner has TP advantage and I want to set up a play. Now if you're pushing into the turret, such as follows, then one thing that you want to do is potentially to dodge around that pink ward, once again, is to get a ward right here. Now, even if you clear the pink ward, a lot of times people buy more pink wards if the jungler comes down to pink ward. So that's why, although the tri-bush is the premium for you to get a ward in because it covers both these spots, a lot of times you get contested and swept a lot pretty often. And since you only have 3 wards in the early stages, losing a ward is really bad. So I recommend if you do ever have the push advantage, let's say you're pushing all the way to the turret and they're kind of cut it backwards, even if you manage to get rid of this pink ward, walking over and getting a ward here will be really helpful. Once again, this will defend you from basically, champions like Zac or any other champions that are coming through the lane and trying to gank you that way. Also, it will allow you, if you scoot it back a little bit, to spot anyone who's doing the crux so you can kind of track where the jungler is.